next few years, like 2027, 2028, we are gonna see a boom again. I'm still buying because I know in the next few years, we are gonna come back and there is gonna be money to be made. It's just gotta be able to wait.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of More Than a Sale, where it's not just about the successes, it's about the failures, the heartbreaks, the setbacks to get to where you are today. And today I have one...
Cara, welcome to the show.
Cara Hirsch.
Cara Hirsch.
She is known as a condo queen. 6.3 billion in sales volume, 8,500 units sold, 35 plus completed projects.
And founder and CEO of Hirsch and Associates.
I'm born and raised in real estate. Don't ever buy just to flip it. You always buy and hold. That is the rule of real estate. It is a long-term investment and it creates passive income. You know, you're here for referrals. You're here to build relationships. You're here for the long term, and be honest and don't just try to cut corners to make a quick buck. Market has been very good to me. The industry has been very good to me. I think when you're passionate about something, it obviously makes the world of a difference.
Your facts and successes are remarkable. We have what, $6.3 billion in sales of units sold. We have 8,300 units sold, 6.3 billion volume sold. Yeah. We have 35 successful projects completed. Holy crap, how does that feel?
It's good. I'm tired. Market has been very good to me. The industry has been very good to me. I think when you're passionate about something, it obviously makes the world of a difference.
Now, you and I have had the pleasure of knowing each other for a very long time because we've worked together on numerous sites. And talk to our audience members and our listeners about what's it like on your side. You are the listing brokerage for builders. You represent builders. You played that middle ground of representing your client and at the same time working with agents like myself to sell the project and help it complete to, completion. So what does that look like?
It's a lot of putting out fires. Every day is different, which is, I think, what I love most about it is it keeps you on your toes. It's really about pleasing both sides and finding compromise. I think that's the best way to describe it. You know, from a client standpoint, obviously we're hired by the developer. We need to make sure we take care of our developer's best interests. But at the same time, we obviously work with brokers like you and even purchasers, and we got to find a way to make the deal work. So it's a lot of thinking outside the box and strategizing and presenting. You know, sometimes it's all about the way we present it. It's about the day that I get the builder, because every day is different in their mood. And it's really just working with them and understanding from our client perspective, what's their goals, and then figuring out from there, okay, how can I position this to get these sales done based on what they're looking to achieve?
So I'm excited in our conversation because we're going to get a chance to ask about what's it like working with some of the agents and the tantrums they have.
Oh, we're going to talk about
and
that.
we're going to get right into it. It's going to be a great podcast. And then we're going to get a chance to talk to you about what's it like working with the developer, because you have two different perspectives, and you're that person in the middle. So you have to be a unique...
We're the punching bag.
You're the punching bag. When you're working with I like to call them sellers, because you're the listing brokerage. So in terminology, when we're listing homes, we're working with the seller. Yeah. The seller has needs. They have 3 requirements. Can you sell my home? How much can you sell it for? And what are you going to do to market my home to bring the top dollar? Is it something similar when you're working with a developer?
Yes and no. A developer is a lot bigger of a picture. Mm-hmm. So, from the moment they buy the land, it's about what we can sell it for, but how can we maximize revenue? They have timelines. What a lot of people don't realize is there's a lot of risk from a development standpoint of just from the moment they purchase that land. And typically from the moment they buy the land to when it's complete, it's anywhere from 5 to 7 years probably. There's a lot of moving pieces involved. It's a lot of consultants and working with different consultants and making it happen. But I would say overall, the best way to describe it is it's like a puzzle. We're putting all these different pieces together to kind of build and finalize. And for them, it's all about total revenue. What can we achieve? How will it work? What are our timelines to get there? Because then they use what we give them to kind of build out their pro forma, is what we call it. And that's their risk factor. Okay, what's this going to cost us? Does the site even make sense?
When we look at total revenue, the revenue is broken down into different factors, right? Because you're looking at the overall. Yeah. So break that. What is that total revenue? What does it include?
So total revenue usually takes out land costs, it takes out all the construction costs, it takes out lending costs, it takes out broker commissions, which by the way are one of the biggest line items in a pro forma. Again, don't shoot the messenger because I don't see them necessarily, but from what my clients tell me. And then we take all the costs associated with, development charges, Section 37, there's so many different fees and taxes. And then our fees as a listing brokerage. And then really it's that net amount is their revenue. that they go home with. And what people don't realize is actually not as large of a number as a lot of people think. I mean, obviously they do well, but it is, once you take out a lot of these amounts, it's substantially.
And per site, it can vary.
Yeah, it all depends on the land cost on that site. It all depends on the climate, the interest rates, everything. By the time you start selling, if the development took a long time, then sometimes that can cost you more, sometimes it can cost you less. It really depends.
And at what point do you enter the picture?
So we try to enter the picture as soon as possible. I would say where we do things a little bit differently is, if you can tell, I'm very hands-on. So I like to understand. Like, I always joke that when we go to a pitch with a client, I ask all the questions because I want to know who they are and if they know what they're doing. I think it's extremely important in this market, but we typically come on as soon as they're looking at that site, they're reaching out saying, hey, what do you think we could sell this for? We're thinking of buying this site. Great. We give them kind of our opinion letter. This is what we think we could do. And then from there, they'll either tie up the site. And then really, I like to be involved as soon as possible so we can say, okay, you're going in for city approval. Here's the sweet mix we think we should do. This is based on what the buyers are going to look at. And we'll start working on sweet mix right away. And then usually there's a bit of a lull for, I would say, about 6 to 8 months while they get the approvals done. And then we go heavy into floor plan design, building design.
And then once you have all of those things and assets put together, then the broker relationships come into play.
Exactly.
And then that's a grand launch.
Yeah.
And then, of course, sharing the information. And now the brokers have to get their clients in. And your sales team would now assist us brokers to ensure, and you would assist us to make sure the sales get fully completed.
Yeah, like typically before we go to launch, we've been working on a project on average about a year.
Wow.
Minimum of a year. It's typically sometimes a little bit longer, sometimes a little bit shorter, depending on when they bring us in. But on most of our projects, we've been working on it for about a year before bringing it to market.
So you're pretty much right then. From a site to actually launch some of the projects that we see, they've taken almost like 4 to 5 to 6 to even 8 years, depending on by the time they kind of put everything together and have everything in its own maximized form.
And it's all dependent on what they're doing and how they're designing it in the city. Like, is there a lot of back and forth with the city? You know, do they have to go into fighting with the city on some of the zoning rights? Like, it just really depends. But for the most part, typically from when they purchase to when they actually launch, that time frame is anywhere from 18 to 24 months.
So now we're going to dive deep because this is more than a sale. So what are some of the challenges that you encounter or can encounter during that process of sales, from launch to sales to even before the project is supposed to launch? So share your experiences of something that, you know, you've come across or a situation that you handled.
I think a great example is you start, let's say, a year before and the market changes. And we've seen that a lot over the last few years. So at the time when we started doing this project, this is what the sweet mix should be. This is what people are buying. And then 6, 8, 9 months into it, all of a sudden the market's changed a little bit, and now their buyers aren't buying those suite sizes as much. They're buying, let's say, for example, before it was the smaller, now they tend to it's the larger. So you're really trying to, okay, hold on, now I got to re-strategize and revisit this key play because it might be outdated, even though at the time when we started it wasn't. So it's constantly being, I think the biggest thing for us is being in touch with the market. You know, I call you all the time. I call a lot of agents and bug you and harass you to know what's going on, what's working, what's not, what's selling. Because for me, from a listing standpoint, it's so important for us to understand that, because we really try to have, you know, feet on the ground and make sure we're really cultivating the right product for a buyer.
And during that process of things changing, I've seen prices change last minute. Like originally there was a conversation, okay, we're going to start off with this, and then launch time comes and the price is totally different. And these are all changing factors as they go along. So where would you say are, you know, during the suite mixes for a developer, where would you say the bulk of the revenue is during the suite mixes?
I mean, it's hard to say. The bulk of the revenue is based on how much efficiency we got in the building.
Yeah.
So, and how many suites we can actually develop. To make it easier, the less efficient the building is, the less revenue they're going to make. The more efficient a building is, and you'll see that sometimes if you ever look at some key plates of a building and you wonder, why would they design it like this? Some of these plans just, they aren't good. That's because they're trying to maximize every inch of square footage to get that revenue back. And when I used to do it and I didn't know that, I used to look at this being like, why would you design this floor plan? It's dreadful. And then sitting with builders and constantly going through and being like, no, let's cut this out and give it to the hallway. The builder's like, no, I'm not going to make money, right?
Yeah.
So kind of understanding that, and it's really just maximizing as much GFA is what they call it as we can.
Yeah.
And I think from pricing, you know, big reason why prices change is because construction costs change, interest rates change. So what happens is you don't go to really what we call tender your building until you're closer to having everything designed. And it's happened to us before where we've been ready to go to market. We have the pricing, and then they find out the prices are higher, the construction costs are higher than they anticipate. And we have to revisit it because, in my opinion, I'd rather go out higher than I said and get a project built and done versus we come out, we underprice it, and then they can't build it.
So timelines are super important in this.
It's honestly like a puzzle. Everything plays within each other. And if one factor isn't done right, it can throw off the entire piece.
Why is it that in our industry for pre-construction, we see a lot of launches during fall time and springtime?
Because typically that's when the market is, I mean, in general in real estate is the best. You know, I would never suggest to launch in the summer. It's usually the quietest time because most people mentally are just not there. I mean, even for me, I wouldn't really look at buying a property in the summer. I'm in summer mode. I want a vacation. I want to relax. Other than some markets, we've seen it if interest rates go down during the summer, or for example, if you have a cottage country type product, then yeah, I would launch that in the summer. And typically in the winter, it's especially over the holidays, people are spending a lot of money. They're not really necessarily thinking about buying, and it's cold, it's dreary, people aren't really that excited. So it's usually just, but again, honestly, over the last few years, that's changed a lot too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, these are principles that we follow, the cycles, but then these cycles change. It's like, what the heck? We launched in the first week right out of New Year, and bam, the project is completely sold out.
Or sometimes you'll wait until the fall, but then there'll be multiple launches, and then all of a sudden there's way too much inventory on the market, so everyone's scrambling, right? Like it's really tough. I think, in my opinion, right now where you can do well is your product, your location, and your price point. I think it's super important. I think price point is a really big one right now, and just making sure that you're targeting that demographic for that specific location.
Because you work with a lot of builders and developers, what's happening on their end right now as the market has shifted quite drastically, especially in the pre-construction world, where it's not a full sellout from day of launch altogether. It's slow and steady, and some sites are just at a complete standstill. So what is a builder doing or a developer doing? And then, we start hearing and seeing all these different news and reports. Now, I'm an avid pre-construction seller. We sell a lot of pre-construction. We're for it because we know that everything is undersupplied and there's not enough land in centric areas to, go horizontal. You're gonna have to go vertical. Density and city planning, and even the cities want more condos, so to house more people. So what is a developer doing? I mean, are they renegotiating terms with their bankers? What are they doing? Because they also have ongoing costs and they have timelines themselves to hit because of borrowing. Break it down for me, please.
Yeah, I think, gone are the days of blowing out a project in 3 weeks. I don't think that was healthy, to be perfectly honest. Of course, it was great in some ways, but it also leaves a lot of revenue on the table for a lot of developers. So back in the day, and I go back in the day, let's say when I was selling 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, our typical sales timelines were 12 to 18 months to get to the construction threshold. And typically a construction threshold is about 70 to 75%. So usually you get to your first 50% in about 6 months, and then you take another, anywhere from 3 to 6 months, maybe a little bit longer, depending on the project, to get to that 75. And I think we need to get the mentality back there. I just think that's where we are now. From a builder standpoint, one, it's making sure they build that into their performa, because a lot of builders were working off of what the performas were before, which was I'll sell this to 75% in 6 months. And timing, like you said, is everything, because they have, we think interest rates, I'm variable on a lot of my mortgages, we're getting hit. Imagine now having a massive development, millions and millions and millions of dollars, and you're getting hit on these interest rates as well. Every month counts. I've had clients that have told me their interest cost is, their loan is, $350,000 a month.
Yeah.
That extra month adds up.
Yeah.
So it's really important to look at timelines. It's really important to structure it properly. A lot of banks, what people don't realize, and it all depends on the developer and their relationships with the banks, but there's a lot of banks who don't want them to sell out. The banks used to say you have to hold back 20%. We want...
And why would they say that?
As collateral. So if something happens, or if costs, because again, costs could change, construction costs, they have that collateral of that 20% of the building to now sell at a bit higher of a price to make up for those changes. It's shifting a little bit now. Again, it's all site specific, relationship specific. We're seeing a lot more lenders instead of the 75% financing, they're doing what we call tranches. And tranches are, instead of going in at 75, they'll start construction at 50. If you hit your 50%, they'll start it, and you kind of have different goals. So instead of one goal to get to 75, we have like 50, and then we get another, let's say, set of money if we hit 60 or 65, and then we get another final set of money at the 75. Like, they are being a little bit more flexible with that stuff. And again, it's all based on relationship. But we are seeing a lot more of that. And we're seeing a lot of lenders who I guess would have been considered B lenders before from builders coming in and being very, very active in the market with developers as well.
When I read news and reports and, you go online and you read the blogs and, the Reddit users as well, they definitely don't hold back. Let's just put it that way. They say that we as brokers are so responsible for increasing or inflation or promoting inflation of prices because of, the price points that we sell and that we do. I always like to answer that with, actually, no, it's you guys that are willing to pay the price.
Exactly.
It's not someone setting the price, it's someone that's willing to pay that price. If they weren't willing to pay that price wouldn't be set in the first place. So again, it's supply and demand. Absolutely. If the demand is far greater and someone's willing to pay for it. So having said that, what do you do in a situation like we are in now during our market timeline, and for our listeners and our audience members, by the time this show gets released and this episode gets released, maybe the markets are different, hopefully at that point in time. But right now, we're seeing a lot of delinquencies at the time of closing where buyers are unable to close. Now, we hear more of those stories than the actual people that are forced to close, but generally the consensus is they're having to come up with more funds, they're unable to close, and they have to put more down than the initial 20% that was stipulated, and where the appraisals are coming in a lot lower compared to what was sold. What happens in a situation like that? What are your thoughts in a situation like that? Do you think that there should be some sort of price adjustment at the time of closing? Do you what do you say?
I'm laughing because I could go on this for a tirade of this.
Yeah.
So I help a few of my developers right now in this position to work with buyers and kind of get us to this point. To your point, you signed a contract. At that time when the market was good, you were willing to pay that price.
Yeah.
But now all of a sudden you come back and obviously the market has changed. And I think the biggest thing we're seeing and the struggle with appraisers, and I'm not going to bash appraisers, but it's a whole other conversation for another day, is resale and pre-construction. There is a massive gap right now because what's happening is on the resale market, and I will be one to say I have multiple investment properties. I've thrown a few of my investment properties up for sale because the numbers don't make sense to me anymore. I'm in the negative I was variable on my interest rate, so I put them up. What's happening is the resale market, especially in condominiums, we have an influx of inventory. So what that's doing is bringing down the average price because for a lot of us, great example, I just sold something that I bought in 2015. I bought a 1-bedroom at $240,000, right? Even at what I'm selling it at today, I've done well. I've made money. So I'll take a little bit of a hit because I'm still up. And you're seeing this big gap. So from an appraiser standpoint, they're really struggling with new builds because, some of these people bought 2-3 years ago and the market's not there right now. It hasn't caught up because we have so much inventory on the resale market. What a lot of buyers don't understand is you are in a binding contract. What they don't understand is that the builder has taken out a loan on this land, on that specific unit. They owe the bank that money. So if you can't close, it's the builder's responsibility to pay back the bank that amount of money that you paid for that unit. So I've had clients that have come and said, well, give me $200,000 off. It doesn't work like that because if they're giving you $200,000 off, they're having to take that money out of pocket and give it back to the bank. And when you're having a building, sure, if I have a smaller scale project, maybe there's a bit of flexibility, and a lot of times there's not. A lot of times the budget, it's so little in the pro forma. But if you have a 565 unit project, great example, if I'm doing for you, I got to do for all. I think we're very big about being fair. So now start adding that up. It adds up. It's big numbers. What a lot of purchasers don't realize, they will be sued. And I've spoken to multiple lawyers about this. You will be sued and it will cost you more than if you go find a private lender for a year or two and let this kind of blow over. The reason being, you're going to be due, you're going to have to pay back, you're going to lose your deposits, whatever you've put down. You're going to have to pay back commissions that the builder has paid and any additional commissions to resell the unit. You're going to have to pay any legal fees, and legal fees add up very quickly. We just had someone who didn't close, and they're already at $15,000 in a few months coming back to the builder saying, can we figure something out?
Wow. Well,
we've already come back to you and given you options. Like we told you this was going to happen. And the other thing is the purchase price difference. Typically, you've made a bit of money, or again, all depends on when you bought, but let's say the project hasn't gone down in value, But we have to sell now your unit, and we have to sell it as fast as possible because the builder has to pay back their bank loan. They make their money at the end. They want to pay back the bank loan and then they want to close it. So if we have to, we'll say fire sell it or sell it quickly, we're going to drop the price to get it sold really fast. And that difference in the purchase price comes back on the buyer. So when you actually add up the cost, it typically is a lot more than, let's say, if the appraisal comes in short $100,000, $200,000. And I get it. Listen, for some people, most people, that's a lot of money. They don't have that kind of cash sitting around. But what I'm finding when I'm talking to a lot of buyers, and I've been talking to them directly, is they're not looking at other options. They're just saying, I can't close. I don't have the money. They're nervous because of everything in the speculation they're hearing. I'm not going to look at it. But they're not actually going into, okay, let me look at a private lender. Let me look at what this is going to cost versus what it's going to cost me if I don't close. And that's where I'm really struggling right now. And I'm trying to educate a lot of agents about that too. Because obviously from an agent, you don't want your clients not to close. You don't want them to walk away and lose a bunch of money. No one wants that. But we need to educate them on what it's going to look like to walk away versus the cost of if you just hold on to it and ride it out. Because the market's always going up and down. If you can hold on to your property through this, we all know it's going to go back up.
I agree with you on a very large scale, because what ends up happening in the pre-construction world from an agent standpoint is, in the world of internet leads, there is no relationship. Okay, and when the market is hot and units are moving like stock prices, okay, you want it? No, you don't want it? Next. Okay, you want it? Okay, great, come here, fantastic, fill it out, and then you're on. It's just been the nature of the business. So my question to you moving forward in our conversation is, what aspect of the pre-construction business, if you can change, improve, impact for the positive, or completely no, it should be done this way, even though it's not, what would you say from your professional experience? I
think it's educating the purchaser. And this is not just real estate, this is anything. People buy into hype. I'm probably the last person that'll buy into hype. I'm all about the numbers. I'm all about doing the research. I'm all about looking at an area that I know there's going to be growth. My best properties that I've purchased, and I'm an avid investor, so I preach it because I do it, have been in areas of future growth. They're not really there yet, but in 5-10 years, I know they're going to change, and I know there's going to be money to be made. And I think it's not just buying because it looks good, because it's fancy, because there's lineups out the door, because everyone and your brother and your sister and your uncle are talking about it. It's really just, is this right for you? Some people want to buy trophy real estate, and that is totally your prerogative. You can buy what you want, but why do you want to buy it? What is it that's attracting you to that? And it makes sense for you, right? And every real estate it's a personal decision. It's what works for everyone, and sometimes it works for some and doesn't work for others. But I think it's understanding the product, understanding what you're purchasing, and making sure it works for you and your lifestyle and what you're looking to buy it for, versus, oh, I saw this ad, it looks so great and everyone's lining up for it, I gotta be a part of it. And to your point, that's what happened a lot, is that, and you're right, people came to you. It wasn't you forcing them to buy. They signed themselves and they bought. And I executed multiple contracts that I wondered, wow, these people are paying, this is high. I can't believe the market's here. But it's what people, they get caught up in the hype. And that's my big.
So now it's great because it's such a unique combination of you and I. Now that I'm from the sales standpoint, we're working with the buyer goes, well, you know what? There's so many pre-con projects. How do I know where do I make the most amount of return? Okay, sure. Then we simplify it. All right, let's focus on the 3 areas. Let's focus on the future growth areas. Let's focus on the city funding areas. Let's focus on, being first in that particular area and buying early because we know there's 10 other towers coming or 15 other towers coming based on the future city plans, et cetera, et cetera. How do you sometimes know which project is going to, be on a rise or development on a rise? Some say buy in Toronto, some say buy in Saga, some say buy in, Vaughan, some are like, don't even buy in the GTA, buy completely outside of the GTA and make money. There's all these different fundas and principles. Now, Hamilton was put on a big brink that, Hamilton is now future growth and future city development. Then it became St. Catharines and Niagara. And I think this is a combination of marketing and stats. And I think they do this based on the demographics and population growth as well simultaneously. Where are people shifting towards? So during the pandemic and the COVID, I feel like it's really messed up the timelines and the stats, because now we need fresh stats, because the stats during that time were limited because everybody's movement changed and it's scattered.
Well, it's a great example is downtown. Downtown to us, so we have A, B, and C sites is what we call them.
Yeah.
An A site was downtown. And a B site, was just outside downtown, and a C site was, the Durham region, let's say Whitby and those. And now it's honestly reversed. And it's because it's fundamentally just price point, right? And I think, like I said, it's an emotional decision. Everyone is different. And we can't look at this as a cookie cutter, okay, this site is here. I think it's looking at the area, looking at the project specifically. What area am I in? Who are the owners around here? Who lives here? Who do we think is going to buy here? And really catering to them. And really understanding what are their wants, what are their needs, what are they looking for? Do they want a pool in the building? Will they not use a pool in the building? Price point wise, I think affordability, I mean, we can talk about it. Affordability is a huge problem right now. It is very expensive. So finding something that is affordable, but still not, I won't say cheap, but affordable, but still you're getting in.
I would say what is affordable and what is cheap. Affordable is based on your earnings, based on your lifestyle, based on how much you make, you know, of what you can afford to pay. And everyone, you know, $1 million earner compared to a, you know, $100K earner is going to be very different altogether. And same thing with the other point that you made as well. It's cheap. Like, how would you, like, do you constitute, you know, 400K cheap, but then 400K cheap could be in the, you know, middle of nowhere.
Or for some people, it's they're looking at, you know, for me, maybe I say, okay, the quality that they're using at this project isn't for me. I'll pay a little bit more because I want a bit more quality of product.
Got it.
But I'm in that, to me, that's important. So I'll spend a little bit more. And maybe it means that I'm only going to buy 1 unit versus if I went to the other project, I could have potentially bought 2 units, right? Like, it's all specific to the person and what they're looking for, and just really what they're looking to do. Is it a buyer that's looking to live in it? Is it a buyer that's an investor? Are you looking to build a portfolio, or do you just want to get in and have 1 or 2 units for your kids or for yourself? Like, everything. So like for me, as a great example, I wanted to build a portfolio. So I looked at all my investments from that aspect. Is, okay, how do I build my portfolio? How do I stretch my money out? Where are the best places to buy from an investment standpoint only? And that's how I looked at it. Whereas I've worked with friends of mine who it was very different. They were looking to buy and get into the market, their first place, and then eventually grow and use that place to kind of their stepping, like their ladder into the real estate market.
And to add on to what you're saying, Cara, the principle before was, okay, you buy a Precon today, 4 or 5 years later, you know, you close on your unit and it's gone up and it's an investment. Right now, a lot of people, and the mindset, you know, we can't change the mindset. We can only, you know, understand what's really happening, what people are feeling. And a lot of times we always shy away from the topic of how someone may be feeling about a certain scenario. A lot of people feel that there's no more money to be made in condos anymore.
Yeah, and I completely disagree.
Okay.
I think right now we're in a lull. So yes, if you're closing right now, are we seeing the appreciations we were seeing? No. Was the appreciations we were seeing before normal? No. To make, you know, if I signed a contract to make $100,000 within 6 months, that's not normal. Any other city you go to in the world, you're not making that kind of money. So it wasn't really sustainable. However, do I think there's money to be made? Absolutely. One, I think you're seeing the best incentives I've ever seen. I've been in this industry for 14 and a half years here. I've never seen incentives like we're seeing right now. You know, granted, I will say, make sure you know the builder, make sure that it's a viable site, because sometimes too, some of these incentives, I question if the project can even get built based on my understanding of, you know, how a builder's pro forma works. But you're seeing great deposits, you're seeing great incentives. But what people aren't realizing is there's going to be a bottleneck of supply. And no one's talking about it. We're seeing it now all over the news. You know, condos are at a lull. There's way more inventory than we've ever seen before. What we're not talking about is that there's not as many cranes and there's not as much stuff being built, and projects are taking longer to get to their construction financing number, or they're not making it and they're pulling off the market. Never mind all the builders that are holding off and not launching. What's going to happen in the next few years? We're not going to have the supply. We're already short supply. So I could be wrong, but mark my words, in the next few years, like 2027, 2028, we are going to see a boom again because we're not going to have enough supply. We're just not. So the people who are willing to take the risk, and real estate is sit and hold. Real estate is not typically in years, and I grew up in it, so my father used to say this to me, don't ever buy just to flip it. You always buy and hold. That is the rule of real estate. It is a long-term investment, and it creates passive income. So if you sit now, and I've closed 3 properties this year, I'm well aware of the challenges of closing, but I'm sitting and I'm holding because I know in the next few years we are going to come back and there is going to be money to be made. It's just you got to be able to wait. And for some people, to be fair, for some people it's very difficult to do. And I completely understand. But sometimes it's getting creative. A lot of people don't want to get creative and to look at other options.
We as investors, we as purchasers, everyone tries to do this one thing, which is time the market. And there's an old saying, right? It's not about timing the market, it's about time in the market. And it's this clever play on words, although from your principles of investment, because there are some properties that you said you are selling as well, and you are also buying properties. When do you know you need to sell? When do you know you need to start picking up something? Like, how do you identify those opportunities for yourself as an investor?
Honestly, it just depends on where I'm at in my property. So for example, I've sold a few this year because they're older properties. I've had them for 8-9 years. Maintenance fees have gone up. I'm on variable. I'm losing money. It doesn't make sense anymore. But I'm also closing on new properties. I'm also buying. I'm still buying. And I'm buying and so I'm really just moving my money around. So I'm not selling and then putting my money in the bank account, not doing anything with it. I'm selling and then reinvesting it into something else.
So what are you buying?
I'm still buying condos because I'm an avid believer in it. We've done a few cottage type condo resort properties and a few, like, honestly, looking at assignments. Like, there's some amazing assignments right now. And then we have a few pre-constructions that I have coming up that I will be investing in because, again, I know that I'm buying now with a minimal deposit and it's not going to be delivered till 2028. When I know the market's going to change.
It's all about leverage, right?
Yeah,
you're
all
all
about leverage.
All about leveraging your money and then picking on the investments.
Yeah.
Now, you and I can talk about this forever because since, we have you on this podcast, we dive deep into it, and it's more than a sale. It's more than just the successes. It's about the failures, the setbacks. Share with our listeners. Now, I've known you for a while, and I've heard, all your stories, and you're a remarkable storyteller, and the things that have happened in your life, and, the ups and downs, and how you always, move ahead and keep climbing up and up and up. What's a setback in your life that comes to mind that had a profound impact for you, whether it be personally, whether it be professionally, that changed the way you look at things, or changed the way you operate?
I would say that when I was younger, my parents divorced. I was about 12 years old. I would say the divorce wasn't really that dramatic, but my father ended up meeting someone else and got her pregnant pretty quickly. And I have twin brothers whom I adore and can't imagine my life without, and a stepmother who's amazing. But I think from a young age, it created a lot of drama. So there was a lot of drama within the family between my parents. And unfortunately, as kids, sometimes you get kind of pulled into it. And then my mom had moved away. So when I was in high school, she moved away. I still saw her a lot, but I chose to live with my dad. And if you ask my parents, I was always independent. I used to boss all my babysitters around. They would not last. I had like 2 babysitters that would last. I used to tell them what to do. I was really bad. But my mom used to always say, you were very defiant. I always got in trouble at school. I was sent home all the time for dress code because I would show this much skin. Everyone else would do it, but I would be the one that would be pulled out of the thing, and I would kind of fight back on it. But I think that moment when my parents separated, when my brothers came and all the drama, unfortunately, that came with it, was a pivotal point in my life because it made me realize that looking at my mom, whom was an amazing mother, who literally, she didn't work because she took care of us, and nothing wrong with that. But for me, I was like, I will not rely on a man. I will not rely on a partner. I want to succeed myself, and I want us to be cohesive and obviously work together, but I want to be fundamentally successful on my own. And if I want things, it has to be me that's going to go out and do them. Because obviously for my mom, a lot of things changed after that, right? Like she was a stay-at-home mom, and they separated, and you had a certain lifestyle that now is starting to change, and I'm sure it was not easy.
Where the man would be the provider, the mother would be, she'd be the provider at home, taking care of the children.
And it was a full-time job.
It's a full-time, trust me, full-time job.
Yeah. And again, like I think I say it all the time, mothers who work and are mothers, you are superwomen. Like I cannot imagine. I struggle just working and taking care of myself. But that was really a point for me where it was like, okay, you know what, I'm going to go out, and I started working at a young age, and again, didn't have to, like, I'm very grateful. I had a really good life. I cannot complain. People have had it way worse, but I worked and I was just very, very independent. And like when I came out here, I had no one. I mean, I have some cousins out here that were great and, were around, but I came out here by myself. I packed up and left, and it was like, okay, I'm just going to do this and see what happens. And here we are 14 and a half years later.
And how many people know you're from Peck City?
Not many people, because I don't like to talk about it. I'm born and raised in real estate. That's what my dad did back there. So different scale, but
What were some of the things you learned from your father, from his as a kid watching someone in real estate, a child watching someone in real estate? Because that was me as well.
Yeah.
I come from a family full of real estate, so I got a chance to see it all happen and all the action. And you have a greater amount of there's a normalization in the home that you call it, and after when you come into the industry, it's like, yeah, this is normal.
Yeah.
I'm supposed to be busy. I'm supposed to not have time.
Yeah,
I'm
and
supposed
people
to
don't
not
realize
see you.
when they didn't grow up in it. Yeah, so one is that money doesn't just come. You work for it.
Yeah.
I did a lot of open houses so my dad did a lot of new homes back in Winnipeg, but the difference of new homes in Winnipeg is they're actually complete. So they don't sell them usually off spec. They complete them and then they sell them. So I would do the tour. At 10 years old, I was the kid that was taking people through tours, and then he would be set up in the second bedroom as the office. And I swear he played me on this, but he did it on purpose because, as a buyer, you're walking through and there's this kid giving you a tour. You're like, oh, this is so cute. This is so nice. And then I take him to the second bedroom and he would hard close them, and he would just almost sucker them into it because you're not feeling intimidated, right? So, I learned closing. Oh my God, my dad used to just drill me on how to close people and the language. His biggest thing is language of real estate. It's all about how you speak. It's all about what you say. If you present something, you can present it a different way and you can close a sale just from the way you talk. Honesty and long-term. His biggest thing was don't come into the market just to be here and make a quick buck. You got to think long-term. You're here for referrals. You're here to build relationships. You're here for the long-term, and be honest, and be passionate and believe in what you do, and don't just try to cut corners to make a quick buck. That would probably be some of the biggest things. And he actually taught me how to cold. I used to cold call in high school, so he was the one that taught me how to cold call as well, which is not fun, but we did it.
And from Peck City, you packed up and you came to Toronto, and share with our listeners what you did in Toronto.
So I literally got a job offer. I came out here I used to do leadership in the restaurant, got a job offer, went home 3 weeks later, was packed up and was here. Landed, all my stuff was coming on a truck. I had nothing, so I went to Walmart. I lived right behind the Drake Hotel actually at the time. Okay. I'll never forget. I walked to Walmart, new city I didn't even know, and built one of those carts that you see people that shop with, and put an air mattress and whatever I needed and walked home. My air mattress deflated in the middle of the night, so I slept on the floor. I had no pillow. It was fun. Next day went to an agent launch, and I remember just being like, what is this? Because it was 500-600 people in a room, and we do not do that in Winnipeg. Yeah. And just jumped into it, and and worked for someone for quite a long time, and just built my relationships and just was me. I'm very passionate about what I do. I love what I do. I've learned a lot doing it. I have, obviously, like you, I grew up in it, so I think there's a little bit different of an experience because you've seen it from a different lens. And then came a point where about 5 years ago, I thought, okay, I always wanted to do something on my own. I always, I didn't know if that was going to be resale or if that was going to be in the listing side, and really just felt I want to do my own thing and provide the services that I believe in. And it's really, for me, it's with my team, it's a more hands-on approach, and started the company 5 years ago. And here we are now.
You've done an incredible job, because 5 years ago, around that time, I also started my company too. And so when you and I sit down together, we always share stories of oh, this didn't work out, or that happened, or this issue happened, or this, and we always exchange ideas with one another. And I get a chance to learn from you as well in terms of, okay, you're doing this way, both ways, and I share my perspective as well, staff management, and agent management, etc., etc. When you started your company, Hirsch and Associates, how did that feel? First off, getting the logos made. There's an underlying truth of when we talk about a startup, we always talk about it was so smooth and everything went great, but there's those little key details like that logo creation. The logo has to be perfect. The color has to be perfect. The design of this has to be, because this is your baby that you're erupting from the ground up.
So I don't know about you, but nothing's been perfect about starting my business. I'm just gonna say there's been a lot of a lot of roadblocks and a lot of learning. You're constantly learning. Listen, I'm not perfect. I am learning constantly.
So share with us. What are some of those learnings?
The funny thing is when I started the logo, I went and branded it, and I said I wanted something with my name, my last name. Just for me, I wanted to start I knew my brothers eventually might want to come into the business. I wanted to create that legacy. So the marketing company, with no background, went and started names, and they pulled out Hirsch and Associates. And when we had this meeting, I started laughing, and they go, "Why are you laughing?" My dad's company was Hirsch and Associates in Winnipeg.
Wow.
They had no idea because it's not public knowledge. He closed it down. He used to have a brokerage, and then he decided not to keep it, but he still kept that business name. So right away, as soon as I saw it, I said, and they had no idea. I thought, this is meant to be. This is it, because I grew up working for Hirsch and Associates. So it's really like a branch off of something from when I was a kid. So for me, the logo and the name is so special because it's literally what I grew up doing. Support women, and I say this in a way that, but it is a very male-dominated industry. It's gotten a lot better now. We have a lot more women in this space from agents on the outside. There wasn't a lot of women, 5-10 years ago to now. It's definitely changing. But when I first started in this industry, remember, I'm in my early 20s sitting in a room with developers who are all very wealthy, have businesses, and I'm not only a female, but I'm young. I'm young, and you have to prove yourself even more. And I'm sure you saw that too from an agent side when you're young, and it's like, why am I going to listen to you? What do you know? You're in your 20s. So that was always a challenge. And starting your own business, being someone who is young, I started it at 30 years old and trying to prove myself. And I always try to avoid the age, because as soon as someone hears the age, sometimes they kind of think, okay, yeah, no, they're young. They don't know what they're doing. But I think from me, it's every time there's been a challenge, I look at it that I learn. There's been multiple things that I've learned from, and there's been things that I've done well, and there's been things that I've made mistakes on. I mean, I'm human, you're human, like we all make mistakes, and you're constantly learning. But I think the consistent thing has been that I care about what I do. And you'll see it from, a lot of my clients know, I look at a project and the revenue as if it were my own project.
I've seen you in action, and we've traveled together, we've been to places together, and seeing you working in action simultaneously while we're out and about, even on the plane flight, you're working
on the plane.
You're always working on the plane. Any moment you get pull out your laptop, you definitely do it. Like, your work ethic is remarkable. You're the only one that I know that can just do it simultaneously at the same time and have fun too and figure out a way. So you do that's what I learned from you, balancing, but actually understanding how, because you're very effective with your time, and you're very fast with the correspondence, the messages, emails. Like, it's a hustle, but you have that skill ingrained in you, which is remarkable. So let me ask you, moving forward in our conversation, after those learnings and those teachings, and of course the mistakes and things that we make along the way, what's next for you?
It's a great question. It's been a lot of conversation with my COO recently. I think right now, with everything that's going on in the market, I think it's extremely important to stay true to yourself.
Yeah.
I don't get caught up in all the noise. I pay attention to everything that's going on because I think it's important, but I want to stay true to what I started this business for. And what I started this business was to be unique, to be different, to be hands-on, to deliver that approach to the clients from a developer standpoint, but also those relationships with you and other agents, and even with purchasers. I'm on the floor a lot of times talking to purchasers and holding their hand if need be. And I enjoy it. And I think really just staying true to that. We turned down a lot of business. And I'm not saying that we get all the business, but there's a lot of people who come to us and ask us to work with them, and it's just not the right fit. I think at this point in my career, I want to make sure that who we work with is the right fit for us. We work well together. We blend well together. We have similar interests and goals, and it makes everything work a lot better. It's like a car without oil. It's not going to work. So having that oiled and having us together cohesively I've really learned in my career that's so, so important. So, I don't want to be the biggest listing brokerage, and kudos to the people who want to be. Nothing wrong with that. For me, I just want to go day in and day out, loving what I do and having a team that we just enjoy going into work every day. And I think from that and those creates results. If you're walking into a sales office and the team is happy and we're excited to be there and we love what we do, it's a lot different of a sale versus, we're robotic and we're just here from 12 to 6 and we want to get out as soon as 6 o'clock hits. And I think that's really finding that and continuing that on.
And your team is remarkable. I've had the pleasure of working with them, like all of them. The way everything is curated to everyone putting, I think you guys do an incredible job, and you lead it extremely well. And you also taught me, like, they got to be embodiments of you, because you train them a lot as well. You mentored them a lot as well. Speaking of mentorship and training, who's been a big mentor or inspiration in your life, present or past?
There's been a few people. I mean, obviously my father was a huge one. I grew up, watching him, and as a kid I idolized it and always wanted to do this because of him. I think my mother is a big one. I mean, just the amount of dedication she gave to my sister and I to afford, the life we had as kids, and to who I am today wouldn't be here without her. My stepmom, coming into teenage kids, and I was not easy with divorced parents and having 2 kids as well, and she's just, I'm very, very grateful, because most people you talk to don't have good relationships with step parents, and I have an absolutely amazing relationship with my stepmom. I think from a business standpoint, I would say one of my leaders at Joey Restaurants. He probably doesn't realize it, but he really shaped me into the leadership side of it. And I don't think I would be as good as what I do from a leader standpoint if it weren't for him. And he worked with me from a very young age. And there's been a few people on the development, a few developers that when I really started and was more in management early on, took me under their wing and really taught me, and really saw that there was something in me, and really grasped it, and took a lot of time with me. And I always say it and appreciate it, and they mentored me in a lot of ways.
That's incredible. Yeah. It's these people that come into our lives. Sometimes they don't even know it, and it's just that we needed to hear that, or they need to teach us this. Sometimes it's a lesson, right? Yeah. I like to, we had spoke about so much, spoke about markets, we spoke about, your personal life, we spoke about what inspires you. I like to finish off this podcast with a very important question. And that question is, who is Cara Hirsch?
Great question. She doesn't know all the time. I'm not really sure. She's loud. She doesn't hold back. But I'm extremely, extremely passionate about everything I do. I think, anyone who knows me knows that, I don't want to say I'd kill for someone, but I would literally, if you picked up the phone and called me and said, Cara, I need something, it would drop everything and I would be there. Like, that's just the person that I am. And I think I take that into work too, is I think I'm just, what you see is what you get, and you either hate it or you love it. It's gone both ways, but I think I am a believer. I am someone who's driven, who constantly has to be doing something. I cannot sit still. I was sick, I cannot handle it, and I'm always looking for something new. I always want to be challenged. I love a challenge. Doing what we're doing now and kind of thinking outside the box of what are some new things we can do. And
I think you nailed it with that one. You described yourself perfectly.
Yeah, very loud.
Listen, I want to thank you. This is a very special episode for me, and getting a chance to sit down with you, and that's why I wanted to call you at the right time.
Yeah, I know,
when I got a little bit better at hosting and asking certain questions. Thank you for your friendship. Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. Cara Hirsch, another episode of More Than a Sale. Stay tuned for the next one.